Hello. Okay.
Also, when they watch it back, they're just going to be watching a video of us as well.
You can't watch it back. Once it goes, it's gone. It doesn't save onto YouTube.
Fairly sure not. Right.
Whereas if you stop broadcast, you can't start it again.
I think you can.
But it has to load again.
Yeah. That is the roster. I've watched. Doesn't pay again, I should say. And the fact that it's live as well.
It's gone. It doesn't save onto YouTube. It's so funny. Whereas if you stop broadcast, you can't start it again. I think you can. But it has to load again. Yeah. That is the roster. I've watched. It's live. Okay. Should hold up a sign. The video will start in a few minutes. Wait, no, okay. Full screen. I don't know on the full screen.
Now 11 minutes. Yeah.
Well, it's getting really official. Warning. The only relative measure we have at home is Yeshivat.
Sounds.
No. Is anyone listening?
Not sure. I think we should take him back.
This looks pretty nice.
So Taragin says, and then it's easier to, like, when people are coming in, and also know the camera. So then we're going to get from that one.
We're gonna get like the number in the background.
I'm just gonna say. Yeah.
One of the movies that we got all nice looking Yeshivat.
They see the auditorium, they see this room, they think we've got a good.
I'm actually doing doors.
Yo, so my dad's on the stream account.
Yeah.
And he's just like that.
The beat, yeah.
So orange.
I know.
I know.
What's your name?
Yeah.
I'm using that. Yo, we should totally hoard napkins.
The pizza first or at the end?
Don't ask questions like that.
Obviously, choose the first, right?
Curious. Stand up. Just curious.
You want to kill the cats anymore? Curiosity. The cat is dead.
What? No, this is like
1A4 big sheet, 1A5 small sheet. What's this? Or what's A4 and what's A5?
A4 is the big one. And A5 is the small one.
This is the board.
Yeah, I'm saying that how is it? Oh, it's size of paper?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Yes, I can't set that paper because it's no way. Yes. No way. Counter chest. Unpleased. There's the first.
Where's the tag is it?
Actually, saying much about it.
Same, how about just being there?
Sitting with.
Taragin says it's gonna be.
Yeah, like how we can be seen.
You said?
With your comments.
Okay. I like this in there.
Oh, you already got, you're on already?
Yeah, it's broadcasting. Can you everything?
Hi, parents. It's me.
Yeah, me. What? I don't know,
No, the beat.
No, there's a loud actors grouping that everyone hates.
We're close to the hill.
Ask him if it's a beat.
Welcome to our lives.
Lived here.
I'm trying to call my dad. It's cute. No, he did. Projected it? Yeah, right there.
You didn't just like,
You're
for the pizza, bro.
I use your dad body. No, it's from.
Yeah, my dad.
There?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're streaming. We're live.
We're good to go.
Yeah.
There's no pizza in the Shiur.
Close the door.
It's a mecca stones. We're here for the pizza.
Guys, we actually ordered.
We're here for learning. Nobody's here for learning. We're here for the
My
pizza.
father asked if there's a way to stop the people.
What beeping?
We'll close the door.
Oh, that's.
What beeping?
Not you.
Oh, you hear that?
He says it's very loud.
Well, what beeping?
That was. That one.
Is it me?
If you certain age to hear how do you not hear it?
I don't hear any beeping. Is it me?
Now it's really
That's definitely DJ.
Right now.
Wait. I hear something. How do they hear it there if we barely hear
Not
it
that,
there?
not that. Right? Nothing?
It's all relative. I am not making any beeps. So everyone should just know that. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do this in like a bit. Let's hear it open the store.
Okay.
But no, as in like.
No. They hear the beeping.
Got it.
What's the beat?
Oh, there's a beeping out in the hallway.
Yes.
Did the alarm go off?
No, not for someone. It's like the doors.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
definitely this
Sarah.
alarm thing there. So.
Yeah, that's the defibrillator thing.
No, it's not a defibrillator.
So we're just going to close the door. Close the door. Okay, great. Let's learn. So first of all, we need to begin by acknowledging that today is Mother's Day. Very important thing. This shiur was supposed to be given next Sunday, right before Shavuot, until somebody realized that was Yom Yerushalayim. It would be pretty busy. So we moved the shiur up. Had I known initially that it would be on Mother's Day, we would have devoted the shiur to Mother's Day. Very worthy topic. So even though the shiur is on something else, we're going to begin by talking about Mother's Day. I hope that's okay. Is that okay? I assume it's okay with all the mothers. We all know the Torah's emphasis on the mitzvah of kibud aveim. The Torah talks about it from two perspectives. It talks about kavod and it talks about yira. Ish imo v'aviv tiro. Now the words are often mistranslated. People translate the word kavod as respect. The truth is that kavod is more helping, caring for one's parents. Tiro is really more respect. And I think what the Torah is teaching us through this duality of kavod and yira is that a person should relate to their parents both with appreciation and also with respect of understanding that everything they are comes from their parents. And I think that at this age, the age that you guys are at, naturally people are starting to forge their own identity. It's healthy. It's what you need in order to get married. The danger is when that process comes by defining yourselves as different than, breaking away as opposed to building your own self, sometimes with a disrespect, even if it's not shown, but internally, that's something very problematic. And that's what the Torah is cautioning us about. We should appreciate that everything we are, everything we come from is our parents. The Gemara talks about it in a very special way. The Gemara says, basically create a human being. Father, mother, and God. And in fact, the Chinuch talks about the fact that the honor and fear that one should have towards one's own parents is parallel to the way one should relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. A person who doesn't appreciate and show appreciation for the people who they know and see and realize clearly we're responsible for bringing them into this world and raising them and helping them, it's impossible for them to have any types of proper emotions towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who we don't see and don't know. Our parents are the best representatives of this concept of God, of the one who creates us, sustains us, helps us, and builds us. So even as people develop their own identity, it's essential that we appreciate and remind ourselves of all there is to appreciate from our parents, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just one word about mothers in particular. Chazal point out that if you look at kibud aveim, and the mitzvah of Yira, Ish, Imo, V'aviv Tiro, you notice that by Kavod, the father is mentioned first. By Yira, the mother is mentioned first. So if it was both times the mother or the father mentioned first, we could say, okay, it's coincidental. But if in one place it's the father mentioned first and in the other place the mother mentioned first, it's obviously intentional. Chazal say that sometimes people find it easier to help, to care for their mother because they're used to being cared for by their mother. And that's why the Torah says, Kabir Tavicha first. By Yira, say Chazal, sometimes people find it easier to fear, right, to show awe towards their father and not their mother, and that's why the mother is mentioned first. I think this is an important point, that sometimes mothers, because they're there for us, because they're willing to lower themselves in the care for us, people may appreciate what they've done, but not respect them the way a mother should be respected. You're supposed to face them, me, him. Oh, we're switching off. Perfect, now I can drink my tea. These are the children. Hello, children. Now it's a much better view. It's a much better view. You should just leave it there. Perfect. Okay, look at these, great young men. Who wants to see the old rabbi? Right? Okay, and Hanami. I agree. It should face the other way. In any case, as I was saying, it's very important if we talk about Mother's Day, not just to appreciate and express that appreciation and caring for our mothers, but to also respect and see what there is to respect. Not fear in the traditional sense of being afraid of someone, but awe and respect for what our mothers have accomplished, for who they are as people. And if the Torah went out of its way to emphasize that, for sure we have to as well. So let's make sure, in these days, my Rebbe in high school used to say, every day should be Mother's Day. We don't need Mother's Day. Every day is a day to appreciate our mothers. The reason why we need a day is because things we should appreciate every day, we don't generally appreciate every day unless we have a special day, which is why we have a special day to commemorate Yetziat Mitzrayim and a special day for Matan Torah and many special days in the calendar. This is the day to appreciate our mothers and show that appreciation. So let's all make sure to do so. Okay, now to the particular topic at hand, which is naturally related. The question of why we learn with our children, I think, has a lot to do with what we learn with our children. And that's really what I'd like to address. And I think what we're supposed to learn with our children falls into two categories. The first are our beliefs, and the second is our Torah, our information, our directions, our morals, principles. And as I'd like to show, I believe the two are very much connected to one another. And even though they're separate, they're meant to be seen and experienced as one. The first time we see the Torah addressing the responsibility, the goal that parents have to pass things on to their children, maybe now that the pizza's here, we have to turn the computer the other way. Could be that some parents will think their children are only here because Kobe Greenfield is giving out pizza. I don't know anyone would think such a thing, but one could raise the possibility. No, it's possible. Okay. So, but I think the parents will be happy to see that the kids are eating pizza too, right? Not just spiritual, but also physical. In any case, we can continue as we're distributing, right? No, we can continue? After L'chaim's name? Okay. No, okay, you guys will decide. In any case, if we look in the beginning of Parshat Bo, you may notice, if you're familiar with the flow of the Parshiot, that Parshat Bo begins in the middle of the Makot. Not just in the middle of the Makot, but in the middle of one of the series of Makot. We know the Makot are divided within the structure in the Torah into three groups. Titzach, Adash, Biachav, right? Which Makkah is the first one in Parshat Bo? Anyone remembers? Arba, very good. That was Oriel Farajun. So, if his parents want to know, we got the right answer. In any case, Arba is the first, and it's strange that a Parsha would begin there. If you're already going to start a new Parsha, start at the beginning of a series. Started with the Makkah before. Bara. I think the answer is very simple when you look at the first psukim of Parshat Bo. Parshat Bo moves from Parshat Va'era's goal of teaching the Mitzrayim a lesson to Parshat Bo's goal of teaching the Jewish people a lesson. If you look carefully at the goal described by the Torah, in Parshat Va'era, it's V'yadu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. The Egyptians will learn. The beginning of Parshat Bo is what the Jewish people are going to learn. Let's take a look together at the first source. Hashem says to Moshe, Bo el Paro, because I've hardened his heart so that I can teach these lessons. I'm going out of my way to extend the story. So that, the end of Pasuk Bet, Vidatem ki ani Hashem, so that you, the Jewish people, will know that I am God. But before we talk about the Jews knowing, The form we talk about the Jews knowing is Pasuk Bet. Uleman tisaper biyaznei vincha uven bincha et asher talalti b'Mitzrayim. So that you can tell your children and their children. We'll get back to this concept of grandchildren soon, which is really what most of your parents are thinking about when they look at you. Recently, I had President Richard Joel from YU visited, and I pointed out in my office a picture of his son, married, on the wall. I said, "Do you know that guy?" He said, "Yes, he is the father of my grandchildren." Right? The relevance is, in Emir Hashem, you will all fulfill your role. But in any case, we see it already here in the Torah. You're responsible. The reason God is extending the makot is so that you can tell your children and grandchildren about what happened. Parshat Bo, we read the whole story of the final makot, the leaving from Mitzrayim. At the end of the parsha, Hashem tells us the mitzvot we have for future generations to observe the Yom Tov of Pesach and bring the Korban Pesach and matzah and everything. And what's the goal of all these mitzvot? Let's tune in Perek Yud Gimel, the end of the parsha. Keep Pesach, and in that context, Pasuk Chet, V'higadata levincha bayom hu leimor, va'avur ze asa Hashem li b'tzeiti mitzrayim. You tell it over to your children. The word Haggadah appears in the context of telling it to the children, not as in a vacuum. And the interesting thing, how do you know that Chazal linked between the end and the beginning of the parsha? How do you know that Chazal saw that the mitzvah of Magid, described at the end of the parsha, is a realization of the first psukim in the parsha, Uleman tisaper biyaznei bincha? How do we know that that's the case? Because what did Chazal call the mitzvah of Haggadah on the Seder night? The mitzvah of Sipur, Yetziat Mitzrayim. Where did they get that phrase from? From the goal presented in the beginning of the parsha, the bookend for the parsha. So Parshat Bo is the first time we find Hashem telling us about the responsibility to pass it on. And as we know, the Rambam in Hilchot Chametz U'Matzah, after introducing the mitzvah to us in Halacha Aleph, the very first halacha about the details of the mitzvah, Halacha Bet, is mitzvah l'odi'ah l'banim. The mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim is to tell the children, even if they don't ask questions. That's the ideal. Again, based on the psukim in the Torah. Yes?
Why can't we just learn it out from Abraham, Yitzchak, the relationship that the Abbas had with their sons?
It definitely is true if you read Sefer Bereshit that you see that the Avot were a continuation. But we don't have a mitzvah given to us of what we're meant to do and what we're meant to pass on. So you're clearly right that we see the idea of parents and children from before. I'm talking about the chiyuvim that the Torah puts upon us. Okay. I have another shiur that I give about the relationship between parents and kids in Sefer Bereshit, which is different, but that's not what we're talking about today. Okay. If we fast forward now to Sefer Devarim, there we see the responsibility to pass on another major pillar of the Jewish faith. And that, of course, is the experience of Ma'amad Har Sinai. The experience of Ma'amad Har Sinai is important for many reasons. The base that's being spoken about here in Perek Dalet is it proves the uniqueness of God, his existence. It proves his relationship with us. It should remind us of our relationship with him. Looking here in the beginning of the Devarim Perek Dalet, keep the mitzvot, appreciate them. What other nation can claim to have mitzvot like we have and to have received them in this public display of God's presence? Pasuk Tet. Raki shamer lecha u'shmor nafshecha ma'od. Pen tishkach et advarim asher ru'u einecha ufen yasuru milvavcha kol yomei chayecha. Vehodatem levanecha v'lefnei vanecha. And again, children and grandchildren, make sure to pass it on. What? Pasuk Yud. Yom asher amadata lefnei Hashem Elokecha b'chorev. The day you yourself stood before Hashem on the mountain, when God told me to gather them, and you felt and you experienced this sense of Yirat Shamayim. So page 1 is really about passing on the experiences of the Jewish people, the experiences that are the cornerstones of what we believe. Yetziat Mitzrayim, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Har Sinai, the experience of God firsthand, the giving of the Torah. If we move to page 2, we see that the Torah, also in Sefer Devarim, moving forward, after it talks about the experiences we need to pass on, it talks about the material we need to pass on. The Torah as a corpus. And of course, we're familiar with the two psukim from the two parashot of Kriyat Shema, and it's not coincidental. In the first parashot of Kriyat Shema, we say, Vishinantam livanecha. And in the second parsha, Devarim Perek Yud Aleph, we say, V'li'imadatem otam et b'neichem. And of course, there are big differences between the phrase Vishinantam and V'li'imadatem, the learning, the chazara, the internalization of the ideas. But for our purposes now, we're going to talk about the basic concept of learning Torah with our children. And that's the basis of the halacha mentioned in Kiddushin Daf Chavtes in the Gemara. The Mishnah there talks about the responsibilities fathers have towards their children. The Gemara there lists what they are: Brit Milah, Pidyon Haben, a baby. The next stage, Melamdo Torah. The Gemara explains, how do we know that a father needs to teach a child Torah? Quotes the pasuk we saw in Dvarim Perek Yud Aleph. V'li'imadatem otam et b'neichem. The Gemara on the next line says, V'hechatel gamrei avua. In a situation where the father didn't teach the child, how do we know the mechayev yu lemigmar nafshe? How do we know that a child needs to learn even if his father didn't teach him? Meaning, the ideal form of Talmud Torah is what a parent teaches a child, not what the child learns. The child has a responsibility, if his parents didn't teach him something, to complete it himself. But that's b'diavad. Talmud Torah is supposed to be from parents to children. I think that's why the brachos we say in the morning over the mitzvah of Talmud Torah are unique and different than the bracha we say over any other mitzvah. First of all, it's unique in that we have more than one bracha. We don't just say the normal form of Birchas HaMitzvah, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Asher Kiddushenu B'Tzvotav V'Tzivanu La'asok B'Divrei Torah. That's what we find by regular mitzvah. But then we have Ha'aref Ma, then we have Asher Bachar Banu. I think the reason why is because Talmud Torah is more than a mitzvah. Talmud Torah is everything that we're about. To just say that it's a tzivur and to not recognize the fact that Torah expresses how we're chosen by God would be missing a major part of the point. So we have to have Asher Bachar Banu. And in between the Birchas HaMitzvah of Asher Kiddushenu and Asher Bachar Banu, we have Ha'aref Ma. And Ha'aref Ma is when we pray that God should not only give us the opportunity to learn, but should give us the opportunity to appreciate. Torah is supposed to be more than something we learn because we have to. It should be something that's sweet, which enables us to be committed to it. So after we express our commitment to learning, we ask Hashem as a tefillah to help us appreciate it. And what do we hope for? Let's read it together. Ha'arevna Hashem Elokeinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu u'befiot amcha Beit Yisrael. God should make it sweet in the mouths, our mouths, and all the Jewish people. V'niyah anachnu v'tze'etzoinu. And many have the version v'tze'etzoinu, as we saw with the Ben and Ben Bincha. V'tze'etzoei amcha Beit Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha l'shma. Our hope is not that we should appreciate Torah. Our hope is that we should be lucky enough that our children and grandchildren should be part of the people that appreciate Torah. Because that is a major defining part of what it means to be a Jew living his life properly. A person is Jewish because they're born Jewish. A person connects to God by doing mitzvot. But a person experiences Judaism when they experience and appreciate Torah. And so we see that it's not just a mitzvah to learn. It's a mitzvah to teach our children. And it's not just a kiyum to teach our children. It's passing on everything that we're about, the excitement of Judaism that we daven for, and at the same time daven that our children should be part of as well. This special relationship of parent and child in Torah is behind an interesting part of the Gemara in Baba Basra Daf Chaf Aleph. The Gemara there, 3 sources in the bottom of page 2, needs to be remembered for having instituted the Jewish school system. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, I don't call him former chief rabbi of England, emeritus. Of course, Rabbi Emeritus of England, or Rabbi of England Emeritus. And the United Kingdom Emeritus, etc. Right? The Rabbi Jonathan Sachs likes to point out that Judaism predates the world's school systems by almost 2,000 years. Over 1,500 years before the world started planning secular school systems, Judaism had already put it into place. And it talks about the different stages of how he instituted Torah. But what's interesting about this Gemara is what was the situation before he instituted it. Let's take a look. It says, "Batchila, mi sheyesh lo av melamdo Torah." One who had a father taught him Torah. Mi she'ein lo av lo yalamei Torah. It was a personal family thing. Parents taught their children based on the pasuk, etc. The next stage was that they instituted melamdei tinokos b'Yerushalayim. Makes sense. Ki mitzion children to Yerushalayim to learn Torah. But who went? V'adayin mi sheyesh lo av The person had a father. The father may not have taught himself, but he had the responsibility to bring him, his child, to learn as much as possible. So then they instituted in each area, because fathers who could take them to Yerushalayim. So little by little, they developed a system where people could learn anywhere. But the root is not the system. It's when parents teach their children. And that is the model of any teacher. Today, but children have the opportunity to learn a lot more from other people too. But if a teacher is teaching with any other mindset but to be a form of a parent, it's not the way Torah is meant to be taught. A teacher needs to be someone who sees himself as a parent for his Talmidim. And you see this in the Rambam, in Hilchot Talmud Torah, Perek Hei Halacha Yud Bet, in a very strong formulation of the Rambam. Rambam writes, just like Talmidim are responsible to be mechabed, their Rebbe needs to be mechabed his Talmidim and the Karvan to bring them close. Kach Amru Chachamim, Hi Chvod Talmid Chachav V'lech Kishalach. The honor you regard for your Talmud should be like your own. Let's look at the last line. V'tzarech Adam Midav Lovim. A person needs to be careful about how he treats his Talmidim and to love them. They are a person's real children who give him meaning in this world and the next world. Rav Yeshua Hartman, the Rosh Yeshiva of Hasmonean High School, likes to quote this Rambam very often. And he told me a story, not directly, but I heard him tell over a story, which I think expresses this idea very strongly. He said when he was a kid, I don't know how to say it, he was a wild kid. And one day he broke a window in school, so his father was called in, and he was able to, as a little boy, sneak into a closet to overhear the conversation. And the father paid for the window, and asked the Rebbe, what did you do? He goes, I gave him a patch. He said, what gives you the right to give him a patch? He goes, well, I'm responsible. I was like a father, etc. What would you do if your son does something? We got to give him a patch. And then the father said to the Rebbe, do you also kiss him? Do you also show him love? Do you also care for him in the same way a father cares? If a Rebbe wants to give direction, he also has to have that care. Today, Rebbe, I don't think should kiss or anything like that. But the point is to really care, to genuinely care, to feel responsible, and to show that concern. I want to conclude the first part of the Shiur by connecting this to a very interesting Gemara in Kedushin Daf Lamed, the bottom of page 2. Because we saw on page 1 the responsibility of parents to pass on these experiences. We saw on page 2 the responsibility of parents to pass on Torah. The Gemara in Kedushin Daf Lamed says, anyone who teaches their grandchild, and this connects back to what we were talking about, the Torah's emphasis not just on children but grandchildren. Torah, it's as if it was received at Har Sinai. The grandchildren. I think the grandparents here is not just because most are old enough to have maybe been at Har Sinai. Your parents are young people, but your grandparents are. But it's also because grandparents are a step removed. Grandparents represent the traditions that your parents received from people who they received. It's what shows Masora. The reason learning from one's parents is so important is because parents are the people who create us, and parents are also the ones who received it from people who came before them. And really, the two are meant to be one. When we learn Torah, we're meant to be giving over a Har Sinai experience. When we give over about experiences, it shouldn't be in some theoretical way. It should be through the Torah that we have today in our possession is at Har Sinai. And so the two are really one. Our parents are the people who give over to us as they were given, not just as information, but as experiences. And they're giving over to us the laws and customs that they follow that come from those experiences. And the package as one is what a child should learn from their parents. I'm wondering, sitting here in a room with 19-year-old, 20-year-old young men who are asking themselves, why are we having this Shiur? What does that have to do with me? So my parents need to know what they need to learn with me. And I hope that you will realize what the degree to which you understand what it means to be a child of parents is the degree to which you're going to understand what it means to be a parent of children. It's important for you to receive from your parents in a way that's meaningful enough that you can pass it on in a meaningful way too, to really take up your place as part of the transmitter and giving over, right, of the Masorah that you receive. Let's continue with all this on page 3. We'll take it one step further. When we talk about our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not just with our traditions and not just with the Torah we receive from him, but with Hashem himself, the model we use, or one of the models we use, is the model of a child to a parent. Dvarim Perek Yudalid, Bonim Atem LaHashem Elokecha. And because Christianity emphasized this notion of children of God in a physical way, Jews grew up in Christian countries where there was a need to emphasize that we're not Christian, played down this aspect. But really, the Christians got it from, and we believe in the Torah because, the Torah. Bonim Atem LaHashem Elokecha. That's how we're meant to view ourselves. The very famous Gemara in Tanit Afchafei, which talks about how different Tanoim tried to get it to rain in a season when it wasn't raining. They said all these different brachot without success. Finally, Rabbi Akiva stepped up to the plate and created the prayer that we know in a lengthier version today of Avinu Malkeinu. Of course, Malkeinu is also an important part of it. Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech alawata. Avinu Malkeinu lemancha rachem aleinu v'yarduk shalom. People finished eating now. We can turn it around. Yes. Okay, very nice. Okay, very nice.
Carnage that.
So now I get to eat. No, I got to give shit. Okay, fine. Said all right. Seeing the remnants. Okay. Now I'm seeing all the smiley faces. We're fed. We're well fed. In any case, he petitions HaKadosh Baruch Hu as a father, and the Gemara says the postscript is that it began raining. And of course, we know from our different tefillos. For example, every morning we appeal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avinu Malkeinu, Ba'avur Shimcha Gadol, Ba'avur Avotenu Shebatchu B'cha, Atalamden Chukei Chayim, Kein Techanenu Talamdenu, Avinu Avarachamana Merachem Merachem Aleinu, Betein B'Libeinu, etc. We know on Rosh Hashanah, we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we say, Im Kivanim Im Ka'avadim, Im Kivanim Einenu Lechat Luyot, Achet Chanenu B'Totzi Ka'or Mishpatenu. That is the relationship we're supposed to have. And so, the way we relate to our parents and what we receive from them is a natural model for the way we relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what we see from him. It's been well pointed out that many people's relationship with God is a reflection of the nature of their relationship with their parents. They get along with and respect and appreciate their parents. Very often that translates itself in their relationship with God and vice versa. And you see this in a very strong way in the way we address God in Shemon Esrei 3 times a day. For those who don't realize, the difference between Shemon Esrei and everything leading up to it is that in Shemon Esrei we're standing in front of God. In Kriyat Shema we're not standing in front of God. To paraphrase the Gemara in Brachos Avdalid, in Kriyat Shema we're knocking on heaven's door. That's paraphrasing somebody else, but whatever. Right? We're knocking on heaven's door. We're being makabel on ourselves. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But in Shemon Esrei we talk to God in second person. And we address him, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu ve'Elokei Avotenu. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, ve'Elokei Yaakov. I want to focus in on this phrase, Elokei Avotenu. To what extent is it just an introduction to the Avot? Or is it its own phrase that stands on its own? And as we move 2 lines later in the bracha, we say, V'zocher chazdei Avot, u'meivi goel livnei v'neihem. Doesn't mean the 3 Avot, or doesn't mean all of our Avot. And I think we can get the answer by looking at the first generations that God speaks to after the Avot. Sefer Shemot. Sefer Bereshit is, of course, the book of the Avot. Sefer Shemot, in the beginning, God appears to Moshe Rabbeinu. The first Jew he addresses, God didn't speak to Yosef. After the Avot. And how does God speak to him? So on the one hand, in Perek Bet, we're told that God remembered his treaty with Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and therefore came to redeem the Jewish people. But in Perek Gimel, when he appears to Moshe at the burning bush, he says, Anochi Elohei Avicha. Elohei Avram, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. Now here, Elohei Avicha can't be a catchphrase for all the Avot because it would need to be Elohei Avichem, Elohei Avotecha. Avicha is singular, which is why the Ramban, based on Chazal, says that it referred to Amram. Elokei Amram Avicha. In fact, the Medrash goes even further, bottom of page 3. It says when God spoke to Moshe, he addressed him. He spoke in the voice of Amram. Moshe turned around and said, Dad? And then God said, no, it's God, but I chose the voice of your father. Why did he choose the voice of his father? Because our relationship with God goes through our relationship with our own parents, who have that relationship that they learned, that they received, etc. So when we talk about the way our learning of traditions in Torah comes from our parents and is meant to impact us, it's that when we relate to our parents, that is the conduit for relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not just the experiences and the information, but God himself. And I think that's why, to move it forward to Shavuot on page 4, when the Zohar, which is the source for Tikkun Leil Shavuot, for staying up and learning the night of Shavuot, for this powerful experience, when it speaks about what we hope to gain through that experience. It says, top of page 4, that Chasidei Kammo earlier wouldn't sleep the night of Shavuos and would be involved in Torah. And what was their goal in bold? V'amri nesi la'achsana yeruta kadisha lanu v'levnin batrin almin. Let's come and establish our inheritance, our holy inheritance for ourselves and our children in both worlds. A parent brings their child into this world. As we know, the Mishnah says in Bava Metzia, if you have a choice of saving your parent or your Rebbe in a situation where your parent didn't teach you Torah, you should save your Rebbe, because your Rebbe brings you into the next world. But ideally, the parent should be both. Ideally, the parent should be one who ensures that a child gets into this world and is raised and successful in this world physically, but also that they inherit the next world. And that's what these Chasidi Kadmoi had in mind on Shavuot, to ensure that our children receive their inheritance in both worlds. And somehow this was a powerful, special part of the learning on Shavuot night. And I think the explanation is simple. When a person learns any other night of the year, ideally it should be connected to the experience of Har Sinai and our relationship with God. It should be, but it's not as easy to feel. When a person stays up the night of Shavuot and learns with their parents, because this is the night when God is going to give us the Torah in the morning and we're anticipating it and learning in advance, it's a way to pass on this sense of we received the Torah at Sinai and we're giving it on to the next generation. It's a way to ingrain this sense that Torah is more than information. It's our Masorah that we received from God on that night. And that's why, even though you all have the special zchut of spending Shavuot in Yeshiva this year, and there's something powerful about that, because you won't feel the sense of Talmud Torah and Leil Shavuot anywhere else the way you'll feel it in Yeshiva. Something special, and for sure in this very special place. It's important to realize that the Torah we learn is part of a tradition that we receive from our parents. You're here today, not because you met Reuven Taragin or Jesse Horn or Ari Cutler or whoever it was when you were age 17, 16. You're here today because your parents put you into a certain framework that led you towards that. It's who you are because it's what you received from your parents. And if you appreciate that, hopefully your children will too. I think this is why the Shalah, the great Hasidic Kabbalistic master who himself made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael and played a role in the beginnings of the return to Eretz Yisrael in our times, the Shalah formulated a tefillah that we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu about passing Torah on to our children. And he said it's a wonderful tefillah in general, but if you look at the second line, last source on page 4, V'libi Omer, he said, She'et ratzon l'tefillah zu be'erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan. My heart tells me that a special time to say this tefillah is the day before Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Hu ha'chodesh shebo nitna Torah, the month that begins in which the Torah is going to be given. Ve'az nikrayim banim la'Hashem Elokeinu. That's the time when we're even more specially referred to as God's own children. And he said that a person should be b'tainus and really do tshuva and fix themselves to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what are we asking from Hashem? We talk about how we recognize God's creation of the world and creation of us. God's goals for the world, that we inhabit the world pru revu and inhabit with meaningful people. And because this is God's goal, we ask that God help us fulfill that goal. And in the second part of the tefillah, the part in bold, it says, Al kein bati levakeshu lechanein milfanecha, sheheh zari v'zera zari ad olam zera kasher. We ask, first of all, that Our children should be just naturally born the right way, in healthy homes, in kosher homes. There shouldn't be any psulin in our children, in our grandchildren, in our future. Third line, more than that, we hope. Yui Bali Torah, Mari Mikra, Mari Mishnah, Mari Talmud, Mari Raza, Mari Mitzvah, Mari Gomne Chasadim, Mari Midos Trumios, V'yavducha v'yavo v'yira pnimis, and the tefillah continues. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu that our future grandchildren and great-grandchildren shouldn't just be kosher Jews, should be ideal Jews, should be Jews who live Judaism on the highest of level. And again, note, people who learn Torah, people who fulfill mitzvot, people who are gomnei chasadim, people who have proper midos, ava and yiras Hashem, the full package of what Judaism is supposed to be. And it makes sense that this would be the time, the Eis Ratzon for such a tefillah. Now, if the Shiur would have been going on next Sunday, we'd be talking about the tefillah we'd be reciting on Monday. That would be pretty cool, right? The good news about it going on a week in advance is that we have a week to prepare for this tefillah. To say it in the right time when we're truly ready. Now again, you guys could be thinking, what does that have to do with me, man? I don't have any children. The Netziv, Rav Chaim Volozhin, was once asked by the education minister of Russia at the time, when do Jews begin educating their children? And he said, 20 years before they're born. You begin educating your own children through every action you take in building your own path of your own identity. And the best way to educate yourselves is to find the strongest and best way to continue where you come from yourselves. And to know how important the way you develop yourselves is for your future, for the future of the baton that you received from tens of generations of Jews who committed themselves and were Moser Nefesh for what we're about. You know, I'm a descendant of the Graz family, other side of my family of Zelig Reuven Bengis and other great people. And it's pretty scary because they can't do anything to ensure that what they passed on to me is going to be passed on well. It's fully in my hands, which is a scary thought. Because you talk about the Gra and Reuven Taragin, I mean, let's be serious, right? Imagine yourselves in the Olympics. There were 3 fast runners who ran the first stretches. They're giving you the baton with a major advantage. You don't run very quickly. You're not Charlie Friedman, right? You know what I'm saying? You're chilled, you're a slow runner. What are you gonna do, man? You got the Gra or Kiva Eger, you know, they handed it off and you got the big loser here, right? How much careful we need to be with what we're receiving and how hard we need to work to make sure to pass it on properly. And this is the time. Shavuot is the time. Every person who cares about their future because they care about their past needs to be someone who says this tefillah properly. And more importantly than saying is being a person who stands for it. What can we do besides saying this tefillah? More important than saying the tefillah is what we make of ourselves. People always ask, what's the segula? What's the segula for having good children? Being a good person. That's not enough, but it's number 1. So let's think about this. When we think about what we learn with our children, why we learn with our children, what we hope to pass on, let's make sure we are children who learn these things properly so we can be parents in Yirtzeh Hashem, who pass these things on, who teach these things properly. In Yirtzeh Hashem, may we all be worthy of what we received. I meant to get out the Makaros. Anyone need Makaros? Oh, we should sing.